This video is for entertainment purposes only. None of the information you're about to hear should be considered medical advice, and you should always consult a licensed medical practitioner before embarking on a health or lifestyle change. Okay, so we're with Anita from Ketogenic Woman. So it's good to see you. Happy or thankful that you came on here to do this interview for my followers.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, the saying uh, it's sad to admit that I haven't. I just recently came across your YouTube channel. I don't know. It's YouTube is a big world. Sometimes
Yes.
that you don't find everyone all at once. But when I reached out to you, you were right on top of this. So I really appreciate that. Um, so usually I'd like to start the interviews basically by finding out sort of what got you into the keto space, and what led you to living a ketogenic lifestyle in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, that's been a long, over 10-year plus journey that
Mm.
started even beyond that. I did actually my very first foray into keto, but I at that time it wasn't called keto; it was just low carb. Was with Atkins. I followed the Atkins diet back in the late 70s, somewhere around there when that first came out. It was considered to be very fringe, I think. A lot of people, would have called it dangerous back then. And so I tried that for a while, and I was very successful. I've had a lifetime of dieting and battling extra weight, and but I, I guess at that time I didn't understand the whole thing with carbs and how addictive they were, and to me it was a temporary diet. And so I went off it, went back to normal eating, and found my way somewhere about 12 or so years ago to be over 320 pounds, very overweight. And so then I thought, well, the only thing that's ever worked for me after a lifetime of different diets was Atkins, low carb. And I started to do that again. And that's when I first started hearing about keto, was about just 10 to 12 years ago. And it just kept popping up everywhere. And but at that time, it was just when the internet, well, to me it was just when the internet was becoming popular, and you could find things online, and I kept finding just men were doing it. I couldn't find any examples of women doing it. And so I started a blog called ketogenicwoman.com, and it was so that I could talk about my journey with other women. Back then, blogging was more of almost like an online diary,
Mhm.
and so that's how that started. And then after a while, I realized that I kind of learned more about keto, and realized that it was just more than what I had been doing. And so then from there, I started hearing about ketovore and carnivore, and it just these things evolve over time. And so today I'm basically mostly doing carnivore. And at this point, I've lost about 140 pounds in this evolution, and have some more to lose, but yeah, still working on it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's it seems to be a common sort of theme. Like obviously you've been around the low carb uh, thing for quite a while. I remember my dad decades ago. He tried it back when it first came out as well. I don't know how. I was too young to really know what he was doing, or probably even
Right.
care at that point. But yeah, no, it seems a lot of people sort of started on that. Um, and you're right about the evolution of keto. Is that I also find that a lot of people that start, no matter how they start keto, it sort of tends to get cleaner and cleaner if you stick to it,
Yeah.
and then eventually, like yourself, I'm 95% carnivore. I still eat some vegetables here and there, but I feel my best just eating, that protein and like a higher fat protein kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
So you said, yeah, you have a blog. Is that still something that you do, or?
Well, I still have the website, but it's not the same. In the beginning, I would put up things like what I did during the day. It was it was like a online journal slash
Sure.
diary, but now I would call it more of just a place to put my recipes. Although
Sure.
most of my recipes now are on YouTube.
Mhm.
And my blog is actually really far behind my YouTube channel because it's so much easier to film a recipe than it is to write it up on a website. And so I am behind on I have more recipes on YouTube than I have on my website. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Yeah, I think it makes sense though. Like you say, that's another part of the evolution. You went from the original online diary type thing to,
Yeah.
which is what YouTube is turning into for a lot of people as well, right? Like it's a place
It
that you
is.
document
Yeah.
your journey. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wish I had started the YouTube part when I started my journey, but my journey was mostly finished before I started my documenting any of it. So you know, it's one of those things you live and learn. But that's why I'm
Yeah.
here now.
Yeah.
So
I kind of have the same experience because I had lost I guess about 100 pounds before I actually started putting anything on YouTube, and part of that was the feeling of, well, who's going to want to watch a 60-plus-year-old woman cooking recipes who's still overweight on YouTube? Like nobody's going to want to see that, and that's kind of the mindset that I had. So it kind of took a lot of convincing of other people to say, no, you should go on YouTube. I'm
yeah,
glad I did.
yeah. I think I thought the same way about before I started too. No one really convinced me to do it, and had I really didn't know what was going to come of it doing it. It's the same way, like a 50-year-old male talking about keto and stuff like that. I see a lot of couples channels doing very well,
Yeah.
but it's you're right. You never know until you try it, though.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I've seen you're right. You've got a lot of recipe videos on your channel. Is it mainly just recipe type videos that you do?
Uh, that's what I was doing for the first 2 years. I'm coming up to 3 years on YouTube. So for the first couple of years, it was pretty much all recipes, and then I had people, oh, you should, telling me you should try this, you should do that. I started doing something called what I call Tuesday Talks, and it's just kind of a weekly little update of how things are going, and if I have some information to talk about that I feel like talking about, I'll do that. So there's no cooking on that. I try to keep it short, 10 minutes or so. And so those were really well received. And then I decided, I want to try having someone on my channel and interviewing them. And so I did one of those, and I found that I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed having a conversation with somebody else who has been through kind of the same things I've been through. And so I'm glad I did that. So now I'm trying to do more of that. And so there's a few of those on my channel now.
Yeah, yeah. I saw I caught your live with Neely the other night there too.
Yeah,
That was
that
good to
was a
see.
lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Neely's great too. I've had her on the podcast before as well. She's got a
Yep,
good story too, and the way that she's keeping her family, healthy is great information for everybody to have.
it is.
So, yeah, and that's why I actually started my channel doing these kind of interviews. It wasn't with people on YouTube because I didn't know anyone on YouTube at that time. It was all from people on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
But after I got to know a few uh, people in the keto space on YouTube. Then I picked it back up, and because like you, I enjoy talking to other people about this kind of thing. And ultimately, I'm just trying to bring as many different stories to YouTube as I can, so that because we
Yeah.
all know, you know, it's going to resonate with someone, and that's all I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing too. I'd like to share more stories, especially with people in my age group, because there's not as many out there. I'm starting to see them now, but I would love to see more people and have more people to talk to that are, like I'm 65. So, that's, you see a lot of young people on YouTube, and it would be nice to have more people in my age group, both men and women, 60 and up. And, because we have stories to tell and a long history of health problems and dieting and obesity, and it's and we probably don't go to gyms and things like that. So it's a little bit of a different story than a lot of the ones you hear on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's getting that information out there is really important too, because I think a lot of, or I'm afraid that a lot of people get to an older age and think, well,
Yeah.
it's too late to do anything, right? So, whereas
Yes.
really it's never too late to make a change and change for the better.
Yeah, it's never too late. I had a doctor actually tell me one time that it was impossible. She used those exact words. It's impossible to lose weight after 40. And I carried that around for years, like just
Mhm.
as part of my belief system.
Right.
It's so not true. It is so
Yeah.
not true.
No, no, anybody can make that lifestyle change, and it is good. Yeah, you're right. I'm starting to see more and more uh, people in my age group and your age group, and
Hmm.
even beyond that
Yeah.
are changing their life, and trying to make it as best they can for however long they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's a good thing.
yeah. So, do you any sort of specific fasting, or is it kind of just a eat when you're hungry and
I have done a lot of tweaking of my, well, I was keto for quite a few years before I switched to carnivore. And that was kind of a slow switch to, keto, ketovore, carnivore.
Mhm.
But even with carnivore, I've done a lot of tweaking and trying to find the sweet spot for me. I tried the high fat carnivore. I've done sardine challenges. I've done all kinds of things, and intermittent fasting. Yes, I seem to have fallen into a natural pattern of intermittent fasting. I don't do it deliberately. I find that I eat approximately twice a day on most days. And I never would have thought that would be a normal way of eating for me, because I really like to eat. I enjoy food very much. And, that was always what I saw as my problem, is that I just liked food too much. Now I know, of course, that it was the wrong foods, the wrong types of foods. And so, so the fasting, I have done some deliberate fasting, but mostly right now it's just a natural fasting. I get up in the morning. By about 10, I want to have something, and so I have something at 10, and that's usually a full meal. And then I have my second meal at 4:30, and then I don't eat till the next day at 10. So I don't even know how many hours that is, but it's kind of an intermittent fast.
sure, yeah, and I think that's sort of what I tend to lean towards. Like I've actually been experimenting with eating like a fairly high protein meal in the morning before
Yeah.
I go to work, because I've never been someone to eat in the mornings. And I actually feel pretty good doing that, um, because I've done, I went out like a whole year basically eating one meal a day, or having
Oh.
a real shrunk eating window, like
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 hours in the evening. And I don't know, I just found it way too hard to get enough out
Yeah.
in that time, basically.
Yeah. I have tried doing one meal a day, and that is exactly my issue with that, is that I don't feel like I'm getting enough. Well, I mean, I know that I wasn't. If you look at the macros of a one meal a day for me, I just can't eat that much in one sitting. I have to spread, my protein out into two portions at least,
Hmm.
and even now and then I do three, but I think for people that as they're aging, they do need more protein, and so for me, it's important. It's more important to get my protein in rather than say, oh, I eat one meal a day, because I know a lot of people do like that. I just can't do it. So
Hmm.
I don't.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And it's unfortunately, I think a lot of the hype about fasting has pushed it a little bit too far with some
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
It's a good thing. There's definite benefits to it, but the way I look at it is I don't see that there's more benefit to stretching it out farther than what you feel good on.
yeah.
But that's just my personal opinion. Lots of people, do quite well by doing, a 3-day fast once a month kind of thing.
Yes, I have
Yeah,
heard that too,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I haven't attempted a 3-day fast, and
yeah,
so far I don't. I don't have a desire to attempt it.
yeah, yeah. I hear ya. So you're saying you've done like the sardine fasts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you try it? So you're saying you try to do different things to, switch it up and see if different things work. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I like sardines, but I'm not sure I could handle that. But if
I
it helps.
enjoy doing little challenges here and there.
Mhm.
And I do it with other people generally. A group of us will do it together. It's kind of fun. It's a good metabolic switch up, or however, a reset maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I've done a couple of those. I don't think people have to do that sort of thing. If especially if you don't like sardines, like
Yeah.
don't even try if you don't like sardines. But yeah, it was just sort of a fun thing for me to do actually. But I have a weird sense of fun sometimes, so.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not doing that kind of thing. That's just sort of a once in a while thing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. I've never really tried to do anything specific as far as like little challenges and stuff like that, but I do definitely see them like the egg fasts and
Yeah.
beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, and sardine
Yes.
fasts, and the protein sparing modified fasts and stuff like that. It seems like you could do a different challenge every month if you really wanted to.
You certainly could, and I have seen some channels where they do exactly that. They do a different challenge every month, and
Right.
and their followers do it along with them, and it's always nice if you've got people doing something with you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. I just find a lot of the times it gets people get burnt out on stuff like that. But it's all depends on how much people enjoy it, I guess.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. I can relate to that because I think at some point I got burnt out on doing things like that, and always
Mhm.
trying to come up with something new for the next month. And really it's not really about doing that. It's about keeping it interesting for people, and I have people that kind of look to me for some direction, and I don't always have that direction. I don't always have that to give, but I can only do what I'm doing at the time, and sometimes that is very boring. I mean, sometimes uh, you know, steak on a plate is all I want to do for days on end, rather than an interesting recipe or an interesting challenge.
Sure.
Yeah, it's there. You've got to do what's right for you and your body and your goals.
So why don't we, sort of get to know you a bit better, and sort of what led you to being part of the keto low carb community in the first place?
Sure. Okay, so do you want me to start right from the beginning with?
Sure. Yeah. Wherever you want to start, wherever you think
Okay.
is can be helpful with the audience.
All right. Um, well, again, like I was saying, pretty much I've been healthy my whole life. The only caveats were I had 4 sports injuries and surgeries, 2 knee surgeries within a year of each other, 2 shoulder surgeries within 3 years of each other. So that's the life of an athlete. You're always going to get injured, and you're always going to, might have to have a surgery to go along with that kind of thing. It was the 4th injury slash surgery that I knew something was wrong right when I woke up in the recovery room. I had never been in that kind of pain. It was my right shoulder, and I had never been in that kind of pain from the 3 surgeries prior. So I knew something was wrong, but whatever. I had recovered and rehabbed very, very quickly ahead of all my protocols, and I got back into competing in beach volleyball well ahead of the protocol with the orthopedic surgeon blessing. He's like, "You're fine. You rehabbed great. Ready to go." This one, however, it got so bad to the point where I had to take painkillers, and that was something I never had to take prior. So yeah, the whole entire journey to rehab, journey to recovery, I knew something was going on. Well, once I got healthy enough, I started noticing some changes in my health. First off, super thirsty and going to the bathroom all the time. Now, because I was on those painkillers, I thought, oh, and I had also gained weight from the painkillers. So I thought a combination of all that was the reason why I was so thirsty all the time. The painkillers, the weight gain, I was just trying to flush my body with the toxins that were in my body. I was trying to flush them out. That's why my body was craving water, because I was drinking so much water. I was having to pee. Okay, fine. What happened about 2 years down the line, I was eating like a horse. And one day I looked in the mirror and I was skin and bones. I just didn't realize it until somebody brought it up to me. When I took a look in the mirror, and I was just like, oh my God, I can see my rib cage. That's before. So I went to my primary care. And again, this was 2 years of being symptomatic. Primary care did pretty much every diagnosis under the book. I was diagnosed with vertigo. I was diagnosed with a parasite. I had just gotten back from Australia not too long ago. They thought I caught a parasite. That's why I lost all this weight. I was diagnosed with 2 different types of viruses. Names escape me right now. 6 months later, they finally did a blood sugar test on me. And a fasting blood sugar, my blood sugar was 445. They didn't do, did they do an A1C? I think they did do an A1C that first time around. And I was 14.4. And I was misdiagnosed as having type 2. And I didn't fit what I thought was the profile of type 2. I was like, wait a minute, how can I be type 2 when, and I don't mean this to sound cavalier or anything when I say this, but type 2 is insulin resistance, and I wasn't doing anything to lead a life of insulin resistance. I wasn't eating unhealthy. I was very active. Just all the things that what I thought I knew about type 2. I didn't fit that kind of profile in my mind, but I just went with it because I didn't have a medical degree. So basically, I was told to go on metformin, just like everybody does. Try to limit my carbohydrates, my sugar, and try to get some exercise in. Well, I had no stamina left. The year prior, when I was at my worst, I was starting beach volleyball tournaments and I couldn't even finish them because I just had no energy to do them. So when he's like, try to get some exercise, and I'm like, exercise isn't foreign to me, but I can't even walk up a steep hill on the road without getting winded. So this is getting crazy. Well, 6 months down the line of taking the metformin, trying to reduce my carbs as much as possible, trying to get as much movement in as possible. I had no stamina to lift weights. That's when I knew I was really sick, was when I couldn't even go to the gym and do anything. Um, the PCP finally sent me to an endocrinologist. I walk into an endocrinologist's office. She introduces herself, takes one look at me, and says, "You need to go to the emergency room, and I'm calling them right now to tell them you're coming." I'm like, so me being all like, "What are you talking about? I don't need to go to the emergency room." "No, you need to go to the emergency room because you are type 1 diabetic." She didn't, I mean, not even a test or anything. She just looked at me and said, "You're type 1 diabetic." And so me being the belligerent athlete, I'm like, I can do this. I don't need to go to the emergency room. We're good. That's when she was like, "I'm trying to save your life." And now I'm like, "Well, now you're just being melodramatic, okay?" So I finally went to the emergency room, and once I realized that she was dead on serious, and I had the GAD antibodies test on GAD, and the C-peptide, and was diagnosed that night with type 1. So the next morning, I got the bad news of, "You'll have to be on insulin the rest of your life, injections, blah, blah, blah," the whole 9 yards that go with that. In the back of my mind, all I could think of was the same thing that I always thought with my injuries and surgeries: how soon could I get back to competing in beach volleyball? Or was this the end of my career? I mean, I had a 34-year career up to that point with 39 wins over my time. It was like, this was a moneymaker for me. I could not all of a sudden just stop doing this. So once I got into the emergency room and they admitted me and got me on an insulin drip and all that stuff, the next morning I went back to the endocrinologist's office, and she kind of spelled it all out for me as far as what was going to be needing to be done the rest of my life and that kind of thing. So I started off on injections with insulin pens, and they weren't really having a huge effect on me. And then 2 months later, um, a pump was suggested, and I looked through the different pumps that were out there, and I saw a model that didn't have tubes connected to it. You just put it on your body. It's almost like a CGM. You put it on your body, and it sticks right to you, and then you change it every 3 days, fill it with insulin, and change it every 3 days. I'm like, okay, I think I could do that because it'll work with my sports if I ever decide to get back into sports. And I saw some good things about it with some of the groups that I had joined with diabetic online community. So that's why I got started with keto, or low carb at the time. This was back in 2014. My first introduction into low carb was back in 1998. One of the girls on the professional tour, she and I were talking after the season, and uh, we were talking going into the holiday, and it was like, "Yeah, here's the challenge: not to put on that 10 pounds before next season and have to take it off at the start of the season." She's like, "Well, I've been reading about this low carb diet thing, and I think that's what I'm going to be doing." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she was kind of doing a, Cliff Note version for me. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. I kind of heard rumblings about it. I didn't really explore it or anything. But I'm like, yeah, okay, how hard could it be? You don't eat carbs and whatever. I'm good with that. I'm not a big sweet tooth anyways. So, but then I found out it was like no potatoes, no stuffing, no, none of the savory stuff that I liked. I'm like, for 3 months, 4 months, I can deal with it. So that was my first venture into it. So fast forward to 2014, when I was misdiagnosed as type 2, a friend of mine had reached out to me and introduced me to a Facebook community full of type 2 diabetics that were incorporating low carb diets into their world. And I was like, I've done this before. I never really thought to give this another whirl. Let me go in and see what they got to offer here. What they were doing, they were all following the instruction of this guy named Dr. Richard Bernstein. And he is the guru for type 1 diabetes and low carb diets. He is a type 1 diabetic himself. He has followed low carb since probably the 50s or 60s, if I remember correctly. And he had been teaching it to, several people in these groups that were on Facebook. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this type 2 community wasn't really giving me what I needed. It wasn't giving me the education I needed, because they were all talking about putting their type 2 into remission, reversing the symptoms of it. Type 1, there is no cure for. I am type 1 the rest of my life. So one of the admins in the group, R.D. Dykeman, he ran this group called Type 1 Grit. And that was the number one group that followed Dr. Bernstein's protocols of low carb and type 1s. So he invited me to join the group, and I did. And I learned so much from Dr. Bernstein, not just of how to like cover your carbohydrates that you do eat with the insulin, meaning the low starch, low carb vegetables kind of thing. But he also taught me something that to this day I have never heard another doctor talk about, and that's how to dose insulin for protein. And if I did not get that knowledge, I would be having high blood sugars left and right without understanding why. With type 1, because of gluconeogenesis, we have to dose insulin in timely amounts to cover protein needs. So that was something that I really had to learn. I figured out dosing for the carbs that I was eating, and that, the vegetables and that kind of thing. But protein was quite a while. It was about 6 months before I got that down. And I had to use my pump and use all the advantages that came with that pump to be able to keep my blood sugars at a normal level. So within the first year of being on the pump, getting the CGM, and all the group interactions that I had, I was able to get my A1C down from 14.4 to 5.1. After 6 months, so that would be 18 months after the fact, I was down to 4.7. And to this day, that was in 2014, 15, about the beginning of 16. From middle of 2016 to my last A1C test, I have been between 4.5 and 4.9 the whole time. So, and that's incorporating the ketogenic diet, low carb, high fat, whatever you want to call it, my insulin dosing, and getting back into my sports and learning how to adjust all my insulin levels according to that. So.
Yeah, no, that's quite the journey, and I can imagine how going through one diagnosis and then thinking, okay, well, this I can completely understand where you're coming from with, if you get diagnosed as type 2, and you knew enough about health, obviously, to know sort of what the symptoms of type 2 diabetes look like. People with type 2 diabetes, you're right, it's the insulin resistance that brings it on, and it's usually not 100% never, but not usually people that are fairly active and healthy overall that would wind up with that. So I could imagine how crazy that would be to go through that, and then walking into an endocrinologist's office and finding out just by her looking at you that what you've been told so far
Right.
was wrong completely. So, but yeah, it's these are the kind of stories that I love to hear, because we do hear a lot about reversing type 2 diabetes in the community, right? Because there's been a lot of people that have done it. I feel blessed that I never got to that point. I was probably pre-diabetic before I switched to keto, but I didn't have any symptoms or anything. But the number of people that I've gotten to know in the community that have reversed type 2 diabetes, it's a common thing these days, right? But to hear the stories of how you can manage, like you say, you're never going to reverse or cure type 1, but you can manage it with with the medications and the proper diet to go along with it.
Right. And the thing about it is, and I don't like to burst anybody's bubble when it comes to this, because it's a journey for them just like it is me. But I want people to be careful when they say that they cured their type 2,
Mm-hmm.
because type 2 is also not curable. You're always going to have it. It's a matter of putting it into remission, getting it on the back
Right.
burner, and keeping with what you're doing to keep that at bay.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's just words, but I mean, it's important words.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. I did misspeak there, because it is
Not
something
you.
that's always going to be there. Like it's so easy to. You're right. You can manage it and put it into remission to the point where you don't need the medication anymore. But it's always there in the background and ready to come back if you don't, carefully watch what you're doing as far as your diet and lifestyle goes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't you that said cure. It's just I wanted to put it out there because I do
Hmm.
see that a lot in the communities. Um, people saying they cured their type 2. Well, no, you didn't. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you need to know
Hmm.
this.
Sure, sure. But yeah, the one, like, at least we do know now that it's not if you do the right things with type 2, it's not a diagnosis of, well, you're going to have to take medication for it for the rest
Right.
of your life, right?
Right.
Your story is obviously, different, and that's where the where the information is great for the community to know, because I still think that there's a lot of people out there that feel, okay, well, they've been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. There's nothing I can do about it but take medication.
Right.
And obviously it can't be put into remission. It can't be cured, but it can be, there's lots of other stories. There's a professional hockey player in the NHL right now that's type 1 as well.
Mhm.
He's gone through, he went all the way through junior hockey and all that. So like he's playing at the highest level of sports and still managing type 1 diabetes with the proper diet.
Right. Jay Cutler is his name. Jay, the
Hmm.
baseball player. I can't think of his name. He's married to the actress. Um, anyway, he's type 1, and everybody knows him as that. Chris Freeman, who's a an Olympic skier, now a triathlete. He's type 1. He's like, when I was first diagnosed, I joined a type 1 athletes group that I just happened to find while searching, and it's a group that basically very high level athletes, and I've made some really good friends in there. And one of the guys that used to be a moderator in there runs a foundation called Bolus and Barbells. Bolus is when you take a hit of insulin all at once to cover your mealtime carbs and protein kind of thing. And so he does this thing called Bolus and Barbells. He's a power man, strong lifter, and he put together this charity event where all these type 1 athletes got together for a weekend of education, working out, sharing stories, social time, that kind of thing. So I got to meet a bunch of them from that group back in 2017, which was really cool. So
Yeah, no, that's there's always, it amazes me, the communities that are out there. Again, I'm not sort of in any sort of uh, athletic type community. I haven't, I used to be athletic when I was younger, but it's kind of, I go out golfing once in a while, but that's about the most sports I play anymore. But the communities out there, no matter what kind of support that you need, whether it's keto or diabetes or, like it's with the internet these days, you can pretty much find a support group that will merge with any kind of requirements you need.
I never even thought to look on Facebook when I was first diagnosed with type 1. Who knew? And a friend of mine was the one that got me into that first type 2 group. And I was like, Facebook has these type of
Mhm.
communities. I didn't know that. I joined Facebook after my 20th high school reunion. I just thought it was a way to keep in touch with people. And once I found that group, I was like, oh, okay. And then when I met Artie Dykman from Type 1 Grit, he's like, oh, I'm going to get you over to the Type 1 Grit group. And I was like, wait, there's more groups on Facebook? Oh, okay. I did not know that.
With, from your beginning, how and why you got started with keto, and then we can basically go from there.
Alrighty. Well, I started keto 2020 in September. Prior to that, I want to say in 2007, I had gastric bypass surgery. And I was almost 300 pounds, if not more, at that point. And there was heart disease in my family, high blood pressure, diabetes, type 2 diabetes. It was like I was trying to run away from all that stuff. And at the time, I had tried dieting. The roller coaster, you lose some, you gain twice as much for so many years, ongoing. And I talked to my husband, and we had just been married a few years at that point. And I said, I really need to do this. And he's like, you don't need to do it for me. I love you the way you are. And I said, but I don't love myself. I need to do something, and I need to better my health, So when you go through all this for gastric bypass, you go through so many support meetings and testing, and I had the surgery, and a couple years later, I had lost like 90 pounds really quick. And then they tell you to eat the whole grain pastas and the brown rices and the sweet potatoes instead of all the white stuff, and the darker breads instead of the white breads. Well, I did all that. And the weight started creeping back on over the years. But a couple years after I had the surgery, I found out that I was getting hypoglycemic episodes. And I tried to put the two together, and I found out if I ate too many carbs, I was kicking out so much insulin that it was dropping my blood sugars sometimes in the 40s, which was terrifying. And my husband being a type 1 diabetic, I knew the signs when he would go into a hypoglycemic area, because he went through the highs and lows on that stuff. So I bought myself a meter, and I kept checking, and I started reading labels religiously, and I love sugar or cereal. Sugar. I loved sugar, but I love cereal. And I could not find any cereal on the market that was low in carbs. None. It was crazy. And that included oatmeal. So I knew then, that stuff wasn't good, but I still continued with the sad way of eating. And until, my sister Debbie, she had researched diets for her daughter, or different ways of eating, because her daughter had just been diagnosed with fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic. And so she started putting in our sister chat that we have going. We have two other sisters also, about what she was doing, and do we want to do it with her? For like 3 months, all I kept hearing was all these little things about keto. And I said, all right. I looked at my husband. I said, I'm just going to do this for nothing else to shut her up. So in September 2020, I was weighing almost 270. And, my blood work was always pretty good, and I felt okay. However, I had 2 knee replacements by then, and was having a lot of back pain from arthritis and all this stuff. Well, within 23 months of starting keto, and I stayed really strict keto, I stayed under that 20 total carbs for the longest time. I didn't eat any of the keto sweet stuff for at least 6 months. I want to think. And within 23 months, I had lost 100 pounds and I felt great. When I had gone to my doctor shortly after starting keto, I asked him to do an A1C check because I don't remember ever having one done, even being 300 pounds back in the earlier adult years. So he did one, and I told him what I was doing as far as I started keto and all that, and he was okay, whatever. Well, when the results came back of the blood work of the A1C check, it was 5.8. Now, like I said, I had always had decent blood work. That had never been checked, but everything else was pretty decent, regardless of how much I weighed or what I was eating at that time. So when the A1C came back 5.8, I was worried because now I'm thinking, all right, because I'm hearing Dr. Barry and I'm listening to all these different people on YouTube and faithfully watching different videos. And I questioned my doctor. He said, I'm not worried about you. He said, you've already dropped 20 pounds just since you started. You're doing what's right. Just keep it up. Last I had checked, it's 5.0. So I'm like, yes, I'm good. So yeah, I feel so much better than I ever did, even in my 30s and 40s. I'm 65 years old. I had started bowling when I was 9 years old. In my 40s, I had to stop because I was having knee issues and back issues, and it just wasn't worth it for me. 20 years later, I'm back to bowling and I feel great about it. We bowl twice a week, or I do. My husband and I bowl in a senior league on Mondays, but I picked up another league and we may be picking up another one. So, but it's fun and it is exercise, and it's great to be able to do something that I did when I was younger that I enjoyed, that I couldn't do prior to losing this weight for a number of years. So, but yeah, with keto, right now, the way I eat is mostly meat, but I do enjoy keto chow and I do have Choc Zero occasionally, which I need to nix for a while. But yeah, I feel really good. In 2017, before I started keto, in 2014, I had my first knee replaced. In 2017, I had to have the second one done. And I was miserable. It got infected. I wound up with two bacteria growing. One was a staph infection, and one was something else. I was on IV antibiotics for 6 weeks, and then oral antibiotics for 8 months after that. And we all know antibiotics can tear you apart. That was so horrible. And I was like, oh my word, why, now knowing what I know now and what I've done to this point, I wonder if I could have avoided those knee surgeries. I was pretty much bone on bone, so I don't think anything could have been different. But you just never know. This has improved so many things for so many people.
Right.
Could I have avoided them? You just never know. But if you don't try, you won't know.
Sure. Yeah, and it's amazing how things like this, and I've heard this, heard it sort of go this way a lot of times, is that it seems like most of us start for the same reason. We know we need to lose that weight and get healthier, but then it slowly turns into, hey, I've done this, but now exactly like you say, oh, well, I can do all these things again that I haven't been able to do for years. And, you're feeling better and all the aches and pains are gone. So the whole weight loss part of it shifts to more quality of life overall.
Right. Especially as you get older, like I didn't start this until I was 62,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So it was like, can we do this when we're older? Heck yeah. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I did it.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing it. I've maintained this for over a year now.
Mm-hmm.
I still like to lose a little more, but I keep saying if I don't, I know I am way healthier than I used to be.
Sure.
I was on blood pressure medicine from the time I was a teenager until probably about a year ago. I don't have to take it anymore. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking 50 years on blood pressure medicines that you don't have to take. The last time I had my blood pressure checked when I went to the doctor, now mind you, I had an infection and all this stuff going on. My blood pressure was 110/70. And
Mm.
I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know, that was a true win because typically when you're sick, your blood pressure is going to be elevated anyway,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. But yeah, that was a total win.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was talking to my sister the other day, and another that I haven't talked about on my channel yet. I never even thought about it. But when I was recuperating from the knee surgeries, we had a very small house. We had one bathroom in the house. Our bedroom was upstairs. The bathroom was on the first floor. So I slept in a recliner
Mm.
for years, from one knee surgery to the other to avoid the steps. Because that was, and you know, trying to, when you have to use the restroom and you got a bad knee, you don't want to climb stairs because you're not going to make it.
Right.
So, anyhow, um, I had developed bursitis in both of my sides from sleeping in a recliner in
Mm-hmm.
that position for so many years. I could not lay down on either one of my sides without excruciating pain. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's totally gone. And I sleep so much better because I was a side sleeper. So, and when I couldn't do that, that was hard, you
Mm-hmm.
know, trying to get some good sleep, which we all know is very important.
Yeah.
So that was something, like I said, I was talking to her the other day. I said, you know, I said, here's another non-scale victory that I haven't even thought of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, putting the two together because, you know, they sent me to physical therapy for it. So I'm sure that helped, but this has totally taken that pain away. And it's like, yes, because that was big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, healing your body it's amazing how, and I unfortunately, well, I'm sure you see it all the time too, is a lot of people just seem to accept it, the pain and these nagging things that come with age. They think, oh, this is just part of getting old, when
Right.
realistically it's just part of not sort of healing your body properly. And thankfully I was able to recognize that I needed to do something a bit earlier. I was 49 when I started keto,
Mhm.
and I didn't really have any major issues, but you know, I had back pain and knee pain and stuff like that quite often. And, it was get to the
Right.
point where I'd hurt my back or I'd strained my back, and it would take 2 weeks to start to feel better.
Right.
Now, if I overexert myself, I can cause pain still, but it only takes, a day or two and it's all gone.
Right. Well, that's like when I started bowling, when I went back to bowling.
Mhm.
One of the first couple weeks, I mean, I felt a strain across my shoulder,
Mhm.
right below my shoulder in the back. And I knew, I just swore I pulled something,
Mhm.
but it healed pretty quickly considering, you know, how it felt when it happened.
Sure.
And I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in
Mhm.
trouble. At the beginning, I'm like, I am hurting so bad. And my
Mhm.
husband would massage my back and I'm like, this ain't helping. I had a heating pad on my back. And I'm like, you know, but yeah, it's totally worked itself out because I wasn't going to give up. You know, my doctor's like, well, you may not be able to bowl. I said, I am going to bowl regardless.
Mhm.
I'll figure it out. I'll put a patch on there, whatever I got to do, but I'm not going to stop because that's just giving up and you can't do that.
Right.
you know? So it was probably a couple weeks of pain because I kept pushing it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would take some ibuprofen because I knew it was inflamed. It was bad, but that helped and it's all good now. So, and I told the doctor, I did not stop.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me to physical therapy and I'm like, and I go in to see this physical therapist and he said, "Why are you here? You're not in
Mm-hmm.
any pain." I said, "Because it went away. But they
Yeah.
sent me anyway." It was like, it was a one-time visit. And, because my doctor had sent me to ortho and ortho said, "Well, this would do you some good to see what home exercises you can do. And they'll walk you through that," which is the only reason I had to go
Mm-hmm.
is just to get that, this is what you can do at home. So if it happens again, this is what you can do. So it was okay.
Right.
But the guy was like, "Well, you're not even in any pain, so you're all good."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if I had given up, it would still be hurting,
Sure.
because then your whole demeanor, your whole, the whole mindset goes
Mm-hmm.
if you give up. So it's same way with this way of eating. If you give up, where's that going to leave you? You're going to be right back where you were when you started, in the pain, with the weight coming back on and everything else. And, those people that suffer from depression, I feel so bad. That's all going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have that, luckily. I have a great support system with my sister. I have three nieces, and we all are keto, and we hold each other accountable just about every week. We touch base with, the scale and what we've done and all that. But I also have my husband who started keto right along with me about 2 weeks later, and it's done a world of good for him.
Mm-hmm.
Being a type 1 diabetic, like I had said, it has leveled off his blood sugar to where his A1C, when he started it in October of 2020, was 7.9. His latest A1C at the endo was 6.1.
Hmm.
And he's like, "I'd never thought I'd ever see those numbers." And it almost brought him to tears.
Yeah.
It was like, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When I first met this man 20 years ago, his A1C was 16.
Hmm.
It was so off the charts crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He was lucky he was still alive. That was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, he's come such a long way. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's awesome, man. Like I like hearing stories about like that, like the whole our journeys with weight loss and healing and all that is great, but to be able to hear stories about others and like Paul, uh, Defense Wiz, that's in the community as well, being type 1 as
yes,
well, like hearing these stories saying, okay, well, we know it can't be cured, and there, that's just a reality, but it can, make some drastic changes and help in a big way to eat like this or live a keto lifestyle.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I thank my sister all the time for
Mhm.
for keeping on us in that chat.
Mhm.
It's like we just, and I'll tell you, with her, she's always been in really good shape. She had put on a little weight,
Mhm.
but when she did this, she told her daughter, "I'm going to do this with you." And she had started in June of 2020. And she told me, she said, "I was starting to have a little knee pain." She's a couple years older than me. She'll kill me if she hears this.
Mhm.
But within weeks, that knee pain was gone.
Mhm.
And she would tell us this. And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." Knowing what I had already gone through with my knees, because prior to all that, I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." I'd sit there and I would just listen and read what she's telling us and all this before I just bit the bullet and started. And, I am so thankful that I did
Mhm.
and so appreciative of her. that for being so persistent.
Sure.
We had gone to Keto Palooza 2022,
Mm.
and she had her granddaughter make us up these shirts. And it's like, hers said, "I'm the persistent sister," and mine said, "My sister made me do it."